My father loves to brag. He claimed 3,000 cavalrymen were a massive army of 300,000. Surprisingly, he actually held the border. My mother, on the other hand, loves to play the philanthropist. Every year during disasters, she donates half of our family fortune. She stubbornly insists that such a small amount of money doesn't hurt her at all. The union of these two pretentious people produced someone like me, who is a good boy that blushes the moment he tells a lie. So, on the day of my first selection banquet for the princess consort, Lu Qingyi, the daughter of the prime minister, burst in. Pointing at my nose, she shouted, "Shenzi, don't think you can do whatever you want just because you have a good family background. I won't fight you for the title of the prince's consort, but if you dare touch him once, I'll send you to the family temple to become a nun." I was stunned for a moment. The third prince quickly emerged from behind the screen. He pulled the girl into a protective embrace and tried to appease me. Marrying her is only to satisfy the masses. My child is still in your belly, after all. Qingyi smiled triumphantly. I looked at the noble consort and laughed. Your Highness should have said so earlier. It's not like I absolutely must marry the third prince. The emperor said that the choice for the crown prince depends on who my husband is. The banquet went silent for a moment. Then, a wave of laughter erupted. She's just like her parents. Bragging at such a young age. Truly, it's the family tradition. She's still wet behind the ears after all. To dare utter such treasonous words. I sat there upright, not even lifting an eyelid. Lu Qingyi couldn't restrain herself. She walked up to me with her head held high. Though we will be sisters in the future, there's always an order of precedence. His Highness is concerned about my heavy pregnancy. Why don't you offer me this cup of tea today? When those words were spoken, the entire hall went silent. For an official prince's consort to serve a side consort tea, to serve tea as an inferior, was essentially trampling my dignity into the dirt. I slowly raised my eyes, looking at her slightly protruding belly. Miss Lu, you must be mistaken. I don't need to serve you this tea. After all, the third prince's consort hasn't been decided yet. The third prince immediately stood up, shielding Lu Qingyi behind him. Shenzi, don't be ungrateful. Qingyi is carrying my child. She is worthy of being served for the child's sake. I laughed coldly. I turned my gaze to the noble consort in the main seat. Does an illegitimate daughter of a nameless house deserve to be the primary consort? And this child's title? Isn't it a bit too early to decide? The third prince's face changed instantly. Everyone knew. My father was stationed at the border year-round, and my mother was busy with business. I had lived with my aunt in Jiangnan since childhood. He bet that I was unrefined and spineless, and that a few threats would make me subservient to him. Unfortunately, he bet wrong. Presumptuous. It seems the Duke of Zhen hasn't taught you manners. Today, I shall teach you a lesson on his behalf. As soon as he finished speaking, he actually moved to strike me in public. The guests gasped in shock. A smug smile curled on Lu Qingyi's lips. Just as his hand was about to grab my shoulder, I didn't dodge or flinch. I only looked at him coldly. Third prince, I dare you to touch me and see what happens. The third prince's hand stopped in midair. He didn't dare to personally strike me, nor did he dare to gamble away my father's support. But under the gaze of everyone, his dignity was being trampled underfoot by a woman. He couldn't swallow this insult. Fine, very well. The third prince laughed out of pure rage. The legitimate daughter of the Duke of Zhen indeed has backbone. His tone shifted suddenly. Men, hold her down. Two guards behind him immediately stepped forward, pinning my shoulders from both sides. The pressure was immense, as if they were trying to crush my bones. I didn't struggle. My father taught me. If you are trapped in a dire situation, conserving your strength is the best strategy. Shenzi, didn't you have backbone? Today, I will let you know that in my estate, I am the one who makes the rules. He kicked the back of my knees. Caught off guard, I fell heavily to my knees. My knee slammed against the cold, hard stone floor, making a dull thud. Kneel and apologize to Qingyi. Lu Qingyi stood aside, one hand supporting her belly, the other covering her mouth with a handkerchief. But her eyes were full of uncontrollable smugness and excitement. I knelt on the ground without saying a word. You won't kneel? The third prince sneered, grabbing my hair, and slamming my head violently toward the ground. The moment my forehead hit the floor, a warm liquid began to flow down my cheek. Your Highness, please don't. My maid, Lu Zhu, cried out and rushed forward, trying to protect me, but was slapped hard across the face by one of the third prince's servants. Blood immediately seeped from the corner of her mouth. I looked at Lu Zhu on the ground, the warmth in my eyes fading away completely. It seems a simple bow isn't enough to make you learn your lesson. The third prince released my hair and took something out of his sleeve. His Highness cares for you and doesn't want you to feel wronged, so he specifically requested a favor for you. The noble consort finally spoke up leisurely, her voice full of hypocritical mercy. The emperor values the Duke of Zhen's estate, so the position of primary consort is still yours. But privately, you are to be a lowly concubine. Teaching you the rules today can be considered preserving your dignity. The third prince grabbed my finger, and without a word, pressed it onto the wound on my forehead that was still bleeding. A bright red blood print was heavily stamped onto that piece of paper. At that moment, I heard Lu Qingyi's smug chuckle, the suppressed gasps of the guests, and the sound of the Duke of Jin's dignity shattering into pieces. Supporting myself on the ground, I slowly lifted my head. Blood flowed into my eyes, stinging them painfully. Third Prince, I hope you've thought this through. This drop of blood is what you owe the Duke of Jin's estate. As soon as I finished speaking, a figure burst into the hall. He pulled me up, his movements swift and agile. Who dares to touch the daughter of the Shin family? Who dares to touch my Shin family's daughter? My mother's sharp gaze swept across the room, her eyes swirling with suppressed fury. The Third Prince is quite powerful. To dare to lay a hand on the legitimate daughter of a noble house right within his own estate. The Third Prince's face flickered for a moment, but he quickly regained his arrogant composure. He brandished the blood-stained contract in his hand. Duchess, you've arrived at the perfect time. Shinzi has already voluntarily signed this document, willingly becoming my concubine to atone for her sins. He tossed the contract, throwing it at my mother's feet. This was signed by her own hand. The blood is still fresh. Lu Qingyi added fuel to the fire from the side. Madam, His Highness did this for Ziyi's sake. A woman who holds onto her status too tightly will truly find it difficult to endure. Serving the same husband as sisters later on would have been awkward otherwise. My mother's breathing visibly hitched for a second. She looked down at the eye-searing contract, then looked up at the Third Prince. Oh, right, I almost forgot. The Third Prince pulled another letter from his sleeve, shaking it nonchalantly. I also have an anonymous letter here, reporting that the Duke of Jin's estate is hoarding weapons and embezzling military funds. The amount is massive, and the evidence is irrefutable. He unfolded the letter, which bore a vivid official seal. Though the specific contents were unclear, that seal symbolized supreme authority. Out of consideration for our past relationship, I can let bygones be bygones, as long as the Duke of Jin's estate surrenders all its wealth to me. He paused, his gaze landing on me. And in the future, Ziyi must obediently stay in my estate to serve me and Qingyi. Only then might I consider sparing the Duke of Jin's estate. When he said this, everyone was shocked. This was blatant extortion and a threat. My mother's expression darkened completely. Her hands were clenched into fists, her knuckles turning white. Third Prince, you are. Before she could finish, the Third Prince's face turned grim. It seems the Duchess is unwilling. Before his voice could fade, the Third Prince waved his hand violently. The sound of rushing footsteps came from outside like a tide. Men, take these two women into custody. The guards immediately rushed forward, surrounding my mother and me. The sound of swords being unsheathed echoed in the hall, cold and piercing. My mother pulled me behind her. At that critical moment, a world-shaking roar came from outside. Who dares to touch the wife and daughter of Xinyan? Following that, the sound of heavy armor clashing reached our ears in perfect unison. The rhythmic stomping felt as if it were stepping directly onto everyone's heart. The doors were slammed open with a bang. My father's eyes were sharp and fierce, and the soldiers behind him stood like iron towers. The previously arrogant Third Prince actually took a subconscious step back. My father scanned the chaotic hall, his gaze finally landing on the blood on my forehead, and my mother's slightly disheveled hair. Li Jingyan, is this how you treat this general's daughter? The prince forced himself to stay calm. Xinyan, you have a lot of nerve to dare bring troops into a prince's estate. Do you wish to defy imperial orders? Defy imperial orders? My father sneered. When I was repelling enemies in the north years ago, you were still in the palace playing in the dirt. Who do you think you are to talk to me about defying orders? Having said that, he walked straight to my mother, removed his heavy battle armor, and wrapped his cloak around her. Then he carefully reached out, wanting to touch the wound on my forehead, but afraid of hurting me. His hand hovered in the air. Father, mother, I'm fine. Looking at the heartache in their eyes, my nose stung with emotion. My father withdrew his hand, turned back to face the Third Prince, Li Jingyan. My daughter. I can't even bear to say a harsh word to her myself. By what right do you lay a hand on her? The Third Prince was speechless, suppressed by my father's aura. He could only instinctively shield Lu Qingyi behind him. But Lu Qingyi fearlessly poked her head out, relying on the so-called imperial grandson in her belly. Lord Duke. It was Shinzi. She was the one being ungrateful, offending His Highness. His Highness was merely dealing with a small matter, teaching her the rules. Rules? My father gave a mocking laugh. My family's rule is, whoever makes my daughter shed a single drop of blood, I will make them pay an equal price. Before his words even landed, his body moved like a blur. With a crisp, loud slap, Lu Qingyi was sent flying. She slammed heavily into a pillar and rolled to the floor. Her hair was disheveled, her face crooked from the blow, and she couldn't get up for a long time. Everyone was stunned. No one expected my father would dare, right in front of the Third Prince, to directly strike the woman he cared about. You dare hit Qingyi? The Third Prince finally reacted, pointing at my father in shock and rage. My father slowly withdrew his hand. If it weren't for that piece of flesh in her belly, I would not have let her off so easily today. He took a step forward, reached out, and grabbed the Third Prince by his collar, lifting him entirely off the ground. I'll ask you one more time. Who gave you the nerve to touch my daughter? The third prince's feet dangled, his face turning bright red. Guards! Arrest this traitor for me. But those guards of his, facing my father, and that pack of fierce border soldiers behind him, who would dare to take a step forward? My father threw the third prince to the ground, his eyes full of disdain. Take our daughter. We're going home. My mother nodded, supported me, and through the corridor formed by the border soldiers, we walked out. Xin Yan, you can't leave. The third prince scrambled up from the ground in a pathetic state. Do you think this ends today just because you're leaving? Do you think it's over? You broke into a prince's estate and attacked a prince. That is equivalent to treason. His Majesty will not let you off. My father's footsteps paused. He didn't look back. I'll be waiting. Upon returning to the Duke of Jin's estate, my father immediately summoned the capital's best physician to treat me. My mother's tears wouldn't stop falling, yet she still kept up her tough front. What are you crying for? It's just a scratch. When I followed your father at the border, I suffered injuries far worse than this. I looked at them. I gripped the imperial token in my hand. My parents are the people who love me most in this world. I will never allow anyone to trample on that love. 3 days later, outside the Duke of Jin's gates, drums and gongs were blaring. The third prince actually sent a shabby little sedan chair, parking it at the side gate. A steward stood before the chair, announcing loudly to the crowd, the Duke of Jin's legitimate daughter, Xinzi, has behaved improperly. His Highness has graciously not abandoned her, and she has voluntarily demoted herself to a concubine. I am here today to take the concubine into the household. My father was trembling with rage. The third prince intended to take our family's dignity and crush it completely underfoot. The surrounding officials whispered among themselves, just as the third prince was at his most arrogant. A figure dressed in bright yellow, like a god descending, walked out from the duke's estate. That figure approached step by step, and without a word, raised a foot, and kicked the third prince squarely in the chest. The third prince was sent flying back, tumbling onto the ground in a pathetic heap. He clutched his chest and looked up in terror. When he recognized the face of the newcomer, his pupils shrank in fear. Father, you scoundrel, to dare publicly humiliate the daughter of a meritorious official. Do you truly think the emperor doesn't notice? The emperor's voice rolled down the street like thunder. The surrounding commoners and officials all felt their hearts tremble, hardly daring to breathe. The hem of the yellow dragon robe swept the ground, picking up a few scraps of paper scattered during the chaos. The chill emanating from the emperor was more piercing than the ice of midwinter. His gaze was like a blade, pointed directly at the third prince, Li Jingyan. Every word carried the weight of unquestionable imperial power. I heard you also made vows with the daughter of the Liu family, deciding to name her your primary consort. And you even privately decided on your future as the crown prince? How dare you? Who will lead the future? That is my decree and the court's business. Why would I need you and some insignificant woman to decide it privately? The surroundings were so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. Those who had been whispering moments ago now stood with their heads bowed low, not even daring to pant. In the teahouses and wine shops along the street, those who had craned their necks to watch now ducked back inside, terrified of being caught in the emperor's wrath. The duke's personal soldiers held their spears, standing tall as pines, looking at the emperor with burning eyes, full of admiration. His Majesty was, in the end, protecting the Shen family, protecting the heroes who fought for the country. The emperor raised his voice, his sharp gaze sweeping over the officials and commoners, his voice reaching every corner of the street. Today, I shall declare this once more. The legitimate daughter of the Duke of Shen, Xinzi, is my personally chosen third prince's consort. This decree shall not be altered. If anyone dares raise an objection, criticize an imperial marriage, or humiliate the daughter of a meritorious official, they are opposing me, and opposing the laws of the great Zhou. His words carried immense weight, striking everyone's heart. The officials who had been waiting to mock the duke's estate now looked pale. They bowed their heads one after another, secretly terrified of their earlier gossip. The third prince was even more ashen, slumped on the ground, his whole body trembling uncontrollably. His previous arrogance had vanished, leaving only endless fear and despair. He never imagined that his attempt to humiliate Xinzi would enrage his father to this extent. As for you, the emperor's gaze returned to the third prince, filled with a bone-chilling coldness, as if looking at a piece of trash. Li Jingyan, for your lack of virtue, your arrogance, your lack of respect for elders, and for bullying the daughter of a meritorious official. From today, you are grounded for 3 months. Your stipends are halved, and you are to reflect on your sins behind closed doors. Without my decree, you are not to step a single foot out of your estate. The third prince struggled to scramble up, opening his mouth to defend himself, but meeting the emperor's ice-cold eyes, the words were stuck in his throat. Not a single word could come out. He could only watch helplessly as the emperor's eunuch stepped forward, expressionlessly, gesturing for him to return to his palace. That scene was exactly like when he sent the steward to humiliate me. So strikingly similar, yet infinitely more pathetic. The emperor's gaze slowly shifted to the back of the crowd, toward Lu Qingyi, who was shrinking into a corner, trying to hide from view. Lu Qingyi wore a simple plain dress, still pretending to be frail while holding her belly, but the panic in her eyes could no longer be hidden. Seeing the emperor look her way, her legs gave out, and she collapsed to the ground, shivering. Lu Qingyi. The emperor's voice was flat. Yet it made Lu Qingyi freeze entirely. You deluded the prince, corrupted family values, and disrespected the primary consort, out of consideration for the fact that the child in your womb is yet to be born. I shall temporarily spare you from death. However, while the death penalty is waived, punishment is inevitable. Men, take her away. 30 strokes of the cane. Then send her to the family temple for reflection. Without my decree, she is not to leave for the rest of her life. Your Majesty, have mercy. Lu Qingyi screamed and tried to crawl forward to beg, but was pinned down firmly by the palace guards. She looked at the third prince, hoping he would save her, but the third prince could barely save himself now, and didn't even dare to look at her. Lu Qingyi finally realized she was merely a plaything for the third prince, a chess piece for the prince. Now that the game was lost, she was the first piece to be discarded. 30 strokes. With her delicate body, even if it didn't kill her, she would be permanently disabled. Not to mention life imprisonment in a temple with only cold lamps, wasting away the rest of her life. What was the difference between that and leaving this world? The guards were efficient, lifting Lu Qingyi and dragging her away. Her screams gradually faded into the distance. The onlookers all turned their heads away, with not a hint of sympathy in their eyes. As for Lu Qingyi, an ignorant woman, who thought she could walk all over the legitimate daughter of a duke, she was simply seeking her own death. The emperor watched the chaos subside, his gaze falling on my forehead, specifically on the wound that hadn't yet fully scabbed over. His expression softened slightly. He nodded toward my father, the Duke of Jin. Duke, I have let the women of your Shin family suffer. My father knelt on one knee, his voice resonant. I wouldn't dare. Your Majesty is wise. Rise, the emperor said with a wave of his hand. Saying no more, he turned to leave, surrounded by his inner attendants. The imperial carriage moved slowly, and the bright yellow figure disappeared at the end of the long street. Yet the weight of his imperial majesty still loomed over everyone's hearts. Only when the emperor's figure had completely vanished did the street gradually regain some of its liveliness. But no one dared to gossip any longer. The court officials stepped forward one after another to apologize to my father, their manner incredibly respectful, without a hint of their previous disdain. My father kept a cold face, hardly saying a word as he brushed them off. He walked straight to my side and carefully supported me. Daughter, does it hurt? Dad is taking you home. My mother's eyes were red. She reached out to gently brush away the stray hairs on my forehead, terrified of touching the wound. Yet she still tried to sound tough. It's just a small injury. What's a little pain like this to a child of the Shin family? When we get home, we'll have the doctor apply some good medicine and you'll be fine in a few days. But her slightly trembling hands betrayed the heartache deep in her soul. I leaned against my parents, my heart feeling a wave of warmth. In this world, only my parents would protect me regardless of the cost, holding me in the palm of their hands and treating me like a precious treasure. By the time we returned to the Duke's estate, the household was already in a frenzy. The steward and a crowd of servants were kneeling at the entrance, their faces full of fear. My father waved his hand. All of you, rise. Prepare the best medicine and fetch the most famous doctor in the capital. The doctor arrived quickly. It was the retired head of the Imperial Academy of Medicine, who specialized in treating high-ranking nobility. He carefully cleaned my wound, his movements gentle, afraid of causing me pain. My mother sat by my side, clutching my hand tightly, her eyes never leaving my forehead for a second. She kept muttering, gentle, even gentler. Don't let it leave a scar. As the doctor applied the medicine, he praised me. Lord Duke, the young lady is truly blessed. The wound is deep but didn't reach the bone. With a few days of rest, she will recover fully, and there will be no scar. My father finally let out a sigh of relief, his heavy heart settling slightly. He sat by and looked at me, his eyes filled with guilt. It's all Dad's fault. If I had returned to the capital sooner, you wouldn't have suffered such grievances. Dad, I don't blame you. I shook my head. I chose to step into this vortex myself, and now, I can tear it apart with my own hands. My mother tucked a hand warmer into my grasp, and had someone bring bird's nest porridge. Nourish your body first, everything else can wait. If anyone dares to bully you again, your mother will bankrupt them completely, making it impossible for them to take a single step in the capital just to vent your anger. Seeing my parents like this, the warmth in my heart grew even stronger. I gripped the palace entry token in my sleeve. The third prince, the first prince, and the noble consort, what you owe me, and what you owe the Duke's estate. I will take it all back, bit by bit. That night, the Duke's estate was brilliantly lit. My mother had the estate's treasures and banknotes brought before me, piled up like a small mountain. Daughter, all of this is yours. I'll buy you whatever you want. If anyone dares to oppose you, we'll drown them in money until they can't lift their heads. My father, meanwhile, placed his personal blade by my bedside. He said solemnly, this blade followed me through the northern borders. It has protected our home and country. It stays with you now. If anyone dares to raise a hand against you, I will not show them mercy. I looked at my parents. My eyes feeling slightly hot. The world said my father loved to boast, calling 3,000 cavalrymen a 300,000-man army. They said my mother loved to show off, saying she didn't care after donating half the family fortune. But only I knew that their boasting was the confidence that guarded the borders. Their showing off was the kindness of those who cared for the people, and all their tenderness and favoritism were given to me, their daughter who blushes whenever she lies. Early the next morning, a bright yellow imperial decree was delivered to the Duke's estate by the chief eunuch of the Internal Affairs Office. The eunuch was all smiles, his attitude incredibly respectful, a far cry from how he usually treated ordinary nobles. He unfurled the decree and read it aloud. It sternly rebuked the third prince, Li Jingyan, for his actions, ordering his grounding to be temporarily lifted so he could personally come to the door to formally apologize to me and the Duke's estate. Without any delay, after the decree was read, the chief eunuch personally handed it to my father. With a flattering smile, he said, "Lord Duke, Miss Shin, His Majesty truly cherishes you. This decree is meant to give the Duke's estate the support it deserves." My father gave a faint nod. "And had someone reward the chief eunuch with a silver ingot." The chief eunuch left with 1,000 thanks. The servants in the house all held their heads high, their faces full of exhilaration. Because of this one incident, the prestige of the Duke's estate was restored. In the entire capital, no one dared to look down on the estate again. Everyone knew that the Shin family's legitimate daughter was protected by the emperor himself and was the apple of the Duke's eye. She could not be provoked, insulted, or bullied. At dusk, as the sun set, the afterglow spilled onto the vermilion gates of the Duke's estate, making them shine brilliantly. Third Prince Li Jingyan arrived. He only brought 2 personal attendants, foregoing the typical prince's entourage. He wore a plain, simple robe. His hair was slightly messy, his face was ashen, and his steps were heavy. Clearly, he wanted to keep a low profile, to save the last bit of his ridiculous dignity. But he didn't realize that the moment he humiliated me in the street, his dignity was already crushed under his own feet. When he crossed the threshold of the Duke's estate, his steps faltered. Looking at the majestic furnishings of the estate, and the orderly guards, a flash of fear crossed his eyes. But it had come to this. He had no choice but to grit his teeth and walk inside. Inside the main hall, my father sat in the main seat, slowly wiping his precious blade. The blade's edge was sharp, reflecting his stern profile. Every wipe seemed to carry the authority of 1,000 soldiers. My mother sat beside him, holding a cup of freshly delivered tribute tea. She gently skimmed the froth off the top, her manner leisurely, as if she didn't see him enter at all. I stood behind my parents, dressed in plain clothes and a matching coat, looking at him with a calm expression. There was not a single ripple of emotion in my eyes, as if I were looking at a complete stranger. Li Jingyan walked to the center of the hall and stopped. His throat bobbed several times, but he couldn't find his voice for a long time. He looked at my father, then at me, his face alternating between flushing and turning pale. Finally, he squeezed a few words out from between his teeth. "Good General Shin." My father finally stopped wiping his blade. He slowly raised his head, his gaze falling on him like a hawk's. His tone was flat, yet it carried the pressure of a massive army. "Third Prince, your grounding isn't over yet. How do you have time to visit my small shrine? Could it be that you feel His Majesty's decree is invalid?" Li Jingyan's fists were clenched tightly in his sleeves, veins bulging on his forehead. Fury churned in his heart. But in the face of my father's aura, he didn't dare show even a hint of it. He took a deep breath, suppressing his inner rage. Using every ounce of strength, he tried to make his voice sound calm. "Regarding yesterday's events, this king, I have come specifically to apologize to Ziyi, to Miss Shin." As he spoke, he gave a stiff bow in my direction. The gesture was utterly perfunctory, his eyes full of resentment and unwillingness. My mother put down her teacup. The sound of the porcelain hitting the table was sharp and exceptionally clear in the quiet hall. She raised her eyes to look at Li Jingyan, her tone light, but every word cutting to the quick. "We've heard your highness's apology. However, as for the sincerity of this apology, I haven't seen much of it. Could it be that your highness thinks a casual my mistake can wipe away the grievances my daughter suffered? Can it erase the humiliation to the dignity of the Duke's estate?" Li Jingyan looked up sharply, no longer able to suppress the anger in his heart. He exploded. "What more do you want? Father has already punished me. Is the grounding and the fine not enough? Shin Ziyi didn't even suffer any serious injuries. Why be so aggressive? The emperor punished you for the sake of the royal family's face, and to uphold the laws of the court." My father slammed the blade back into its scabbard with a loud clang. His voice boomed, making the entire hall resonate. "What the Duke's estate wants is justice for my daughter, and the price for you insulting her in public." Father stood up and walked step by step toward Li Jingyan. A bloodthirsty aura surged toward him. That was a killing intent forged in the mountains of corpses and seas of blood in the northern borders, not something a pampered prince could withstand. "Li Jingyan, my own daughter, Even I can't bring myself to say a harsh word to her. Much less touch a hair on her head. Her marrying you was your good fortune. And the royal family's good fortune. But what about you? You indulged a lowborn woman. Allowed her to bully her and raise a hand to her. You forced her to sign that document. And made her kneel in public. This debt. Did you really think it could be wiped away? With a single casual apology? Li Jingyan was forced back by my father's aura. His back hitting a pillar in the hall. He had nowhere left to retreat. His face went from red to white. And from white to ashen. He knew in his heart that if he didn't provide a satisfactory answer today, he truly wouldn't be able to walk out of these gates. My father held military power and deeply held the emperor's trust. If he were truly pushed to the limit, the consequences would be unimaginable. He gritted his teeth, closed his eyes, and abandoned all his pride and dignity. Finally, he bowed deeply toward me. It was a 90-degree bow, and he didn't straighten up for a long time. Miss Shen, everything is my fault. It was my poor judgment. My arrogance and self-importance. I have wronged you. Please forgive me. That proud head, belonging to the once mighty third prince, was finally lowered before the duke's estate. I slowly stepped out from behind my father, looking down at him from above. My tone was completely flat. I accept your highness's apology. However, an apology alone is not enough. Li Jingyan snapped his head up. His eyes filled with astonishment and fury. He stared at me. What else do you want? Shenzi, don't push your luck. Push my luck? I let out a cold laugh, my eyes full of chilliness. Did your highness think about that when you humiliated me in public? Did your highness think about that when you forced me to sign that document? Now I am merely asking you to make amends for your mistakes. How is that pushing my luck? I looked at him and stated my requirements clearly, word by word. First, in 3 days, I want your highness to use the full regalia of a primary consort, an 8-person sedan chair, a 16-person litter, and the phoenix crown and embroidered robe, to welcome me from the main gate of the duke's estate into the prince's estate. There must be no neglect, no reduction in the ceremony, and no excuses allowed. Li Jingyan's expression shifted. He wanted to argue, but I didn't give him the chance. I continued, second. On the day I enter the estate, every account book, every ledger, the keys to the storehouses, the bank contracts, and the personnel records of all servants, must be handed over to me. From this day forward, all matters, large and small, in the prince's estate will be decided by me. You are not to interfere. Shenzi, don't go too far. Li Jingyan roared, his face turning bright red. That is my residence. On what grounds would you manage it? Too far? I sneered. There's something even further. Third, every piece of Lu Qingyi's dowry, clothing, and personal items must be cleared out completely before I enter the estate and thrown out of the prince's residence. I do not want to see anything unclean in my own place, nor do I want to hear any news about her. With every point I made, Li Jingyan's face looked worse. By the end, he was trembling with rage, pointing at me, unable to speak for a long time. Impossible. I won't agree to this. Qingyi is carrying my child. You can't treat her like that. Your highness, you'd better think carefully. I took a step forward, looking at him with ice-cold eyes. These are things I, as your primary consort, should already have. They are rights granted by the emperor himself. If you disagree, then I will enter the palace right now to seek justice from his majesty. I'll ask his majesty if I, the officially chosen consort, don't even deserve this basic level of dignity. At the mention of the emperor, Li Jingyan froze entirely. The rage in his eyes was instantly replaced by fear. He glared at me, his expression suggesting he wanted to swallow me alive. Yet he didn't dare resist in the slightest. After a long time, he finally closed his eyes in defeat and squeezed a single word from his teeth. Fine. I agree. A cold smile played across my lips. Objective achieved. Third prince, this is only the beginning. What you owe me, I will make you pay back bit by bit within that estate. 3 days later, at the auspicious hour, the wedding procession from the prince's estate arrived with music. The sounds of gongs and drums filling the air. They stopped at the gate of the duke's estate. The full regalia of a primary consort was present, including the 8-person sedan chair, carved with dragons and phoenixes, and adorned with pearls and precious gems. 16 sedan bearers in red robes stood tall and straight. The scene was grand, drawing a massive crowd of the capital's citizens, who watched and marveled. I wore the elaborate and luxurious phoenix crown and robe, with the 9 dragons and 4 phoenixes crown on my head and an embroidered wedding gown on my back. The train trailed behind me, embroidered with a pattern of 100 children, looking incredibly noble, supported by the matchmaker and my maids. I walked step by step out of the duke's estate and stepped into that 8-person sedan chair that belonged to me. My father stood at the gate, his eyes slightly red. He pressed his personal jade pendant into my hand. Daughter, if you are mistreated in that estate, send word back at any time. I will lead my troops to bring you home immediately. My mother held my hand, giving me a thick stack of banknotes and a tiger tally. This is your mother's personal wealth, and the command token for your father's personal guards. In the prince's estate, You don't need to endure anything. If anyone bullies you, crush them with money. Or crush them with force. Your parents will always be your backup. I looked at my parents and nodded heavily. Then turned to enter the sedan chair. The sedan was slowly lifted, swaying as it went, traveling through the long streets of the capital and finally stopping steadily in front of the prince's estate. Supported by the matchmaker, I stepped over the charcoal brazier, crossed the saddle, and entered the prince's estate. The servants of the household, from the stewards down to the laborers, were all kneeling on both sides. A massive dark crowd. None of them dared to even lift their heads. The same servants who once acted arrogantly in front of Luchingi were now as silent as cicadas in winter, terrified of displeasing me. But just as I stepped through the gates of the main hall, a wrinkled, stooped old nanny hurriedly blocked my path. She was Nanny Zhang, Luchingi's wet nurse, and also a steward Luchingi had previously planted in the estate. Relying on Luchingi's favor, she had been lording it over the estate, never showing respect to anyone else. Now, with a hypocritical smile on her face, she gave me a slight bow. Consort, you must be tired from your journey. This old servant has been waiting here for a long time. It's just that side consort Lu is feeling unwell. Her pregnancy is unstable, and she cannot be exposed to wind or even the smell of festive celebrations. His Highness has specifically instructed that you should go rest at Lanyue Pavilion in the west for tonight. You can receive her greetings once side consort Lu is better. Lanyue Pavilion? I sneered in my heart. That was the most remote and dilapidated courtyard in the estate. Perpetually devoid of sunlight, leaking wind and rain. It was worse than even the servants' quarters. Li Jingyan truly had ignored everything I said. The head he had bowed before my father last night was completely forgotten today. He still wanted to intimidate me. Still wanted to protect Luchingi and make me suffer. The servants kneeling below all stole glances at me, their eyes full of a desire for drama, waiting to see how the new consort would handle this. If that's the case, then don't blame me. I stopped walking and looked down at Nanny Zhang. My tone was flat, yet it carried an unquestionable authority. Oh? His Highness's instructions? I have entered the estate today by imperial decree. Having paid respects to heaven and earth and shared the ritual wine, I am the legitimate primary consort of this prince. By right, I should reside in the main courtyard. Since when do His Highness's instructions take precedence over an imperial decree? And since when can they override the rules of the royal family? Nanny Zhang's face stiffened. She then forced a stiff smile and tried to argue back. Consort, those are heavy words. His Highness is simply being considerate of side consort Lu's weak health. Especially since she is carrying the royal heir. He was afraid you might be disturbed. It was all for your own good. The royal heir? I raised an eyebrow, my tone turning cold. My gaze swept over the surrounding servants, and my voice rang out clear and sharp throughout the main hall. I was unaware that within the laws of Great Zhou, there is a rule stating that when a primary consort enters an estate, she must make way for a side consort. Which palace did this royal rule come from? Was it personally designated by His Majesty, or was it specially permitted by Her Majesty the Empress? I paused for a moment, my gaze falling back on Nanny Zhang, each word piercing like a needle. Does Nanny Zhang think that I, the consort, am some low-ranking concubine who married into this estate in secret? Not the noble primary consort personally titled by His Majesty? Do I need to step aside for a mere side consort? Do I need to live in a remote, dilapidated courtyard and let an old servant like you order me around? Nanny Zhang's smile completely collapsed. Her face turned pale, and her whole body began to tremble. She never expected that I, a seemingly weak woman, could be so unyielding. Every sentence striking a vital point. His Majesty said with his own mouth that day that my marriage into the prince's estate is as the proper consort of unsurpassed nobility, whom no one may override. Does Nanny Zhang feel His Majesty's words are less precious than a side consort's health, or less effective than a casual instruction from His Highness? With this, Nanny Zhang lost her nerve completely. Her legs gave out, and with a thud, she knelt on the ground. She kowtowed repeatedly, her forehead hitting the bluestone floor with a dull thumping sound. This servant wouldn't dare. This servant wouldn't dare. I was talkative, I was muddled. I was foolish. I begged the consort to forgive me. I begged the consort to spare my life. I gave a slight sneer, taking a pair of golden scissors from the matchmaker. The scissors were plated with gold, carved with a phoenix pattern. They were a dowry gift my mother had specially prepared for me. Holding the scissors, I slowly walked over to Nanny Zhang and crouched down. The tip of the scissors aimed at that bright peony at her temple. With a gentle flick and a sharp snap, the peony fell hard to the ground, its petals scattering everywhere. Nanny Zhang, you overstepped the rules, presumed to make decisions for your master, disrupted the order of the prince's estate, and bullied the primary consort. These are serious crimes according to the law. My voice was calm as I addressed her publicly, but the tip of the scissors pressed down with slight force, resting against her throat. A lowly old servant like you dares to wear a peony, which symbolizes the honor of the primary consort. Who gave you the audacity? Nanny Zhang was so terrified that she shook all over, her soul nearly leaving her body. She pressed her head as deep into the ground as she could, tears and snot flowing freely. I know my mistake. I will never dare again. I beg the consort to spare my life. I beg the consort for mercy. Today is the day of my wedding celebration. I do not wish to see blood. I slowly retracted the scissors, stood up, and said in a cold tone, if there is a next time, it won't be as simple as cutting off a flower. Take her away for 20 strokes and send her to the manor for hard labor, never to return to the capital. Nanny Zhang felt as if she had been granted a grand amnesty. She kowtowed repeatedly in gratitude and scrambled away on all fours. The surrounding servants were trembling with fear, burying their heads even lower, not daring to harbor the slightest doubt. I raised my voice slightly. It rang out clear and bright. Bring all the keys to the main courtyard, the warehouse tallies, the farm deeds, and the servant registries, all of them, and present them to me. The matchmaker immediately took the order and left in a hurry. I looked at the group of servants kneeling on the ground, my voice carrying an air of authority throughout the prince's estate. Let the rest of you listen well. From this day forward, I am the mistress of this prince's estate. All matters of the household must be handled according to my rules. Whoever dares to comply outwardly but disobey inwardly, secretly collude, or deceive their superiors, is making an enemy of His Majesty, and an enemy of my father's estate. Their fate will be the same as Nanny Zhang's. My voice reached the ears of everyone present. Those servants kneeling on the ground shook even more violently. They all rose and responded, we obey your command. This servant obeys. We shall follow the consort's instructions. Soon, the matchmaker brought the keys, the tallies, the deeds, and the registries. I took them and weighed them in my hand. They were heavy. This was power, dignity, and everything I deserved. Very well. I nodded. Pass on my order. Call all the stewards of the estate, the head of the main house, the housekeepers, and the farm managers to the main hall to await instructions. Tonight, I must familiarize myself with all estate matters and take inventory of all family assets. Whoever dares to hide anything will be flogged immediately and driven out of the estate. The matchmaker departed with the orders. The people in the main hall withdrew one after another, not daring to delay for a single moment. The main hall was decorated festively, with flickering candles, auspicious dragon and phoenix motifs, red carpets everywhere. The joy of a new marriage was all around. But amidst this joy, one person was notably missing who should have been here, waiting for me, the groom. Third Prince Li Jingyan. He was clearly still sulking, hiding in the study and refusing to come out. He still wanted to give me the cold shoulder. I walked straight to the main seat and sat down, my posture composed, without a hint of grievance or anger. Someone, bring the ritual wine. I shall drink it myself. The matchmaker was a bit hesitant. She stepped forward and whispered, consort. The ritual wine can only be a complete union if His Highness drinks it with you. His Highness must be feeling unwell tonight, and has no time for you. If His Highness is unwell and has no time for me, that is his business. I sneered, and interrupted her. The ritual wine is a royal tradition. The dignity I should have as the primary consort. Since he isn't coming, there's no need for me to wait for him. Someone, pour the wine. They didn't dare disobey. Immediately bringing the ritual wine, and filling both cups. I picked up one of the cups, tilted my head back, and drank it in one go. The liquid was rich, with a hint of spiciness. It was burning as it went down my throat, as if to burn away all grievances and resentment. I didn't pour out the other cup. Instead, I had the matchmaker get an empty bottle, poured all the wine into it, and personally placed a cinnabar seal over the opening. My words were clear and powerful. Deliver this bottle of wine to the third prince tomorrow morning. My voice was loud, yet it carried an unquestionable command. Tell him, this is the ritual wine. The dregs left over by me. Even if it's leftover wine, he must obediently drink it all. Not a single drop should remain. The matchmaker was stunned. She had followed my parents for many years, and knew my temperament well. And she understood what lay behind this. I wanted Li Jingyan to bow his head, to make him understand that in this estate, I am the master. She took a long look at me, bowed her head, and took the order. This servant obeys your command. After the matchmaker and the maids withdrew, only I and my personal maid Luzhu remained in the main hall. Luzhu looked at me, her eyes slightly red. Miss, you've been wronged. His Highness is too much. On your wedding day, he is actually avoiding you. I leaned against the back of the chair, watching the swaying candlelight. My eyes showing no sign of sleepiness, only an icy determination. Luzhu, I am not wronged. Since he was the first to be heartless, don't blame me for being ruthless later. Third prince, since you don't want to give me dignity, then I will take it with my own hands. Since you protect Lu Qingyi, then I will give you a title. That will make you unable to lift your head for the rest of your life. Luzhu saw the sharpness in my eyes and didn't say more. Just silently stood behind me, guarding me. That night, the side hall of the main courtyard was brightly lit. All the stewards in the house came quickly. Not a single one dared to be late. Clearly, the wretched manner in which Nanny Zhang was dealt with had already served its purpose of killing the chicken to warn the monkeys. No one dared to look down on me, the new consort, anymore. I scanned the crowd. Most of them kept their heads down, their faces full of unease and fear. Not daring to meet my eyes, I didn't bother with extra pleasantries, directly placing the account books and registries all on the table, and began questioning them one by one, from the price and quantity of rice and grain purchased, to the monthly wages and rewards/punishments for servants, from the gold, silver, jewelry, and silks in the warehouse, to the yields and rents of the various estates, from the daily expenses of the household, to external social gifts. I questioned everything in great detail. I didn't let any fatigue show, nor any deception pass. These were things my mother had taught me since I was a child. She was the wealthiest person in the capital, with countless properties. Having been exposed to it from a young age, housekeeping and accounting were already second nature to me. For these stewards to try and play tricks in front of me, hiding accounts or lining their own pockets, was simply seeking their own destruction. Several stewards who tried to hide accounts and falsely report expenses were exposed by me one by one, and I ordered them flogged and driven out on the spot. The remaining stewards were scared out of their wits, no longer daring to hide anything, honestly answering every question. After a sleepless night, I had completely figured out all the assets of the prince's estate, clarified all the accounts, and firmly grasped all power in my hands. For several consecutive days, the third prince's estate was in a tense atmosphere. After being flogged, Lu Qingyi was sent to the family temple, and there was no more news of her. Third Prince Li Jingyan also rarely made an appearance, hiding in his study all day. Occasionally, he sent someone to deliver some indifferent tonic, which was returned by me exactly as it came. He knew that I really wouldn't give him any more dignity, and that I was truly going to establish a firm foothold in this estate. It wasn't until half a month later that an invitation from the first prince's estate was quietly delivered to the estate, and into my hands. The invitation stated that a banquet was being held in the palace, a spring flower viewing where the third prince's consort was cordially invited to attend. I put down the invitation, an ambiguous smile curling at the corner of my mouth. Lu Qingyi, you couldn't hold back after all. Even after being sent to the family temple, you still refuse to be quiet, and still want to plot against me in secret. I had known for a long time that before being confined, Lu Qingyi had already secretly contacted the forces belonging to the first prince's faction. The first prince and the third prince had been fighting for years over the succession, as incompatible as fire and water. Now, with my appearance as the consort, bringing the influence of the Duke of Zhen's estate into the third prince's house, it undoubtedly broke the balance between them. Lu Qingyi wanted to use the first prince's sword to deal with me, her stumbling block, while the first prince was happy to add fuel to the fire. Killing two birds with one stone. Not only would it get rid of me and suppress the third prince, but it could also win over the Lu family's power to strengthen himself. This flower-viewing banquet was bound to be a treacherous hangman banquet. Lu Qingyi would surely seize the opportunity to stir up trouble, using the most insidious means, intending to cast me and the Duke of Zhen's estate into eternal damnation. But I am going. Since they want to play, then I will play with them to the end. On the day of the flower-viewing banquet, the weather was clear and bright, with a pleasant breeze. I got up early, put on the most noble makeup in the capital, dressed in luxurious ceremonial attire, wearing the phoenix crown, and rode in the consort's sedan chair from the prince's estate, escorted by maids and a group of guards. I headed straight to the palace. All kinds of flowers were in full bloom along the palace road. Peach blossoms, apricot blossoms, and peonies competed with each other. A riot of color. Truly beautiful. Today's palace was exceptionally lively. Noble ladies from the royal family and family members of court officials were all gathered together, singing and dancing, making it quite a scene. I didn't look sideways, my expression composed, led by the maids. I took my seat in the banquet hall and paid my respects to the empress and the noble consort. When the noble consort saw me, her smile was stiff, the corners of her mouth twitching. She wanted to pretend to be friendly, yet she couldn't hide the resentment and helplessness in her eyes. The situation in the third prince's estate and my conflict with the third prince had already spread throughout the capital. As the third prince's birth mother, the noble consort felt humiliated, yet, due to His Majesty's decree, she didn't dare show me the slightest disrespect. She could only keep up appearances and falsely praise me for a few sentences. I responded with a faint nod, not saying much, and sat down. Halfway through the banquet, maids brought out plates of exquisite pastries, unique in shape, sweet and delicious. I noticed that one plate of pastries placed in front of me was particularly different. It was shaped like a lifelike sugar peony, crystal clear. One look and you knew it was carefully prepared. Just as I was about to reach out for it, a maid suddenly rushed out from beside me and violently knocked the plate of pastries to the ground. The sugar peony shattered into pieces, pastries scattered all over. A total mess. The maid gave a startled cry, knelt on the ground, trembling all over. Her performance was top-notch. It's him, he wants to curse the noble consort. The third prince's consort wants to murder the noble consort. All eyes instantly turned toward me. Some shocked, some questioning, some gloating, some disdainful. But I calmly looked at that maid, my expression indifferent, without the slightest hint of panic. I just quietly watched her, waiting to see how she would finish this good show. The maid knelt on the ground, crying piteously. she wailed, when I was distributing the pastries just now. I accidentally overheard the consort's personal maid whispering in secret, saying that this plate of pastries contains witchcraft items. If the noble consort were to eat them, she would be cursed by evil spells, lose her sanity, and her life would be in danger. In my desperation, I knocked over the pastries. I begged the noble consort to investigate. Her words stopped abruptly, deliberately leaving a cliffhanger, which only invited more speculation. Whispers immediately broke out all around, growing louder and louder. The noble consort's face turned white, her hands tightly gripping the armrest, her gaze toward me filled with a hint of disbelief. In everyone's eyes, my father is the Duke of Jin, holding great military power and immense influence. My mother is the daughter of the wealthiest man with vast wealth, rich enough to rival a nation. With such an overwhelming family background, I should have been content. But I happened to marry the unfavored third prince. So there must be resentment in my heart. Therefore, I would use such dirty means as witchcraft to curse the noble consort and murder the prince, plotting to disrupt the court. I looked coldly at that maid, then scanned the crowd in the distance. At the back, a familiar figure was quietly withdrawing, her expression frantic. It was no one else, but an old nanny who used to be by Lu Qingyi's side in the prince's estate. She was a hidden pawn Lu had planted, and now she was finally being put to use. Witchcraft? I gave a light laugh, my tone flat, but carrying a sense of intimidation. You, a mere little maid, dare to slander the royal family without any proof. Is there evidence? Evidence? Of course there is evidence. The maid acted as if she were risking everything, her gaze turning fierce. She pulled something from her bosom and held it high. When I knocked over the pastries just now, I personally picked this up. Everyone followed the sound and looked, only to see that in her hand she strikingly held a small yellow charm. On the charm was written the word Lian in crooked handwriting, which happened to be the noble consort's maiden name. The hall immediately erupted into chaos. Startled cries rose and fell, and the voices were deafening. Heavens, it really is a voodoo charm. The daughter of the Duke of Jin's estate would actually do such a foul thing? This is too terrifying. She dares to curse the noble consort. This is treason. The noble consort's hand tightly gripped the armrest, her fingertips turning white, her face pale as paper. The look she gave me was full of anger and disappointment. Shinzi, I have not treated you poorly. And the Shin family has also received much imperial grace over the years. I never expected you would do such a treacherous thing. Before I could speak, the first prince rose from his seat, his face full of grief and indignation. He pointed at me and said with righteous fervor, "Third sister-in-law, imperial father trusted your father so much, and the noble consort treated you as a daughter. How could you do something so harmful to heaven and reason, so treacherous and rebellious? Such evil sorcery brings chaos to the court. Everyone has a right to punish you. Someone, arrest this poisonous woman immediately, and hand her over to imperial father for disposal." From behind him, several palace guards immediately surged forward, approaching me aggressively. Their swords were unsheathed, glinting with a cold light. Once the crime of witchcraft was confirmed, it would be a monumental sin. The lightest punishment would be death by poisoning, while the heaviest would be the execution of 9 generations. Even an immortal would find it hard to save me then. The way everyone in the hall looked at me was already like looking at a dead person. They backed away one after another, fearing they would be implicated by me, but I didn't even lift an eyelid, my expression still calm, as if the person being besieged wasn't me. I just quietly watched that maid kneeling on the ground. This charm was picked up from the pastries by your own hand? You saw it with your own eyes? It's definitely not a fake? The maid was momentarily stunned by my calm posture. She nodded repeatedly. Yes, I saw it with my own eyes. I picked it up with my own hand. There is absolutely no falsehood. Good. I nodded, turning my gaze toward the first prince. First brother is so righteously indignant. Presumably it's for the sake of the royal reputation, and for the noble consort's safety. A piece of absolute sincerity witnessed by heaven and earth. The first prince flicked his sleeve, speaking with righteous words. His acting was superb. Such evil sorcery is forbidden, bringing chaos to the royal family and shaking the foundation of the nation. How could I just stand by and do nothing? Shenzi, confess your guilt. Well said. I gave a light laugh, slowly stood up, and walked forward step by step. Since that's the case, then please, everyone, take a good look at what this true sorcery really is, and who the real traitor is. I walked up and personally took the charm from the maid's hand, tracing the handwriting on the charm with my fingertips. I spoke calmly. The handwriting is crooked, and the ink is crude. The person who made this was in quite a hurry to sentence me to death. I shifted my gaze, looking at the first prince, whose face was growing increasingly unsightly, my eyes full of mockery. First brother, did you know that half a day ago, something was delivered into my hands? I have always been curious as to who it was. Who could allow Lu Qingyi, a side consort confined to the temple, to still stir up such trouble, and even mobilize people within the palace, to put on such a grand show for me right here? I held a sealed letter high, facing the guests in the hall, my voice clear. Why don't we open it and see? Let's see what conspiracy is hidden behind this. Enough. The noble consort stood up abruptly, interrupting me. Things have come to this. What more do you want to argue? The voodoo charm is right before our eyes. Do you still want to forge evidence to frame someone else? Your Highness, I looked directly at her. My voice stronger than ever. Without giving an inch. Do you want to see a vague, dubious case of witchcraft? Or a grand play of treason where a prince colludes with outsiders? Intending to frame a loyal official? Murder the daughter of a hero? And shake the foundation of the nation? As soon as the word treason was spoken, the entire hall fell into a deathly silence. Everyone's gaze instantly shifted from that small yellow charm to the letter in my hand. The first prince's forehead was already beaded with cold sweat. His legs were shaking slightly, and his eyes were filled with panic and fear. I looked at him no more. In front of everyone, I sliced open the seal with my fingernail and slowly unfolded the thin piece of stationery. I read it out clearly, word for word. Chingy, I hope you are well. Let this letter be as if we were meeting. You must endure for now. Wait patiently in the temple. I have made proper arrangements for the flower feast. I will bribe a maid, plant the voodoo charm, and make the daughter of the Duke of Jin's estate fall into ruin, never to rise again. At that time I will help you leave the family temple. You will be the rightful primary wife of the third prince's estate. Help me ascend the throne, and we shall share the glory together. My voice paused here. I looked up with a half-smile at the ashen, shaking first prince. First brother, will you read the words that follow? Or shall I read them for you? The handwriting on this letter is your own. And the seal on this letter is the private seal of the first prince's estate. Even if you want to deny it, you can't. The first prince's face turned white inch by inch, without a trace of color. The guards behind him also stopped in their tracks, neither advancing, nor retreating. The scene froze in an eerie stillness for a moment. What is it? Is first brother illiterate or does he not dare to read it? Why don't you speak? I pressed him step by step, my tone icy. Or are you saying this letter wasn't written by you at all? This voodoo plot, was it not set up by you? You intended to frame me to suppress the third prince, seize the position of heir, and deceive the emperor. Your crime is punishable by death. You're slandering me. The prince finally regained his senses, and let out a shrill scream, forging a letter. To frame a prince? Shenzi, how dare you? I've never been very brave. I only dare to tell the truth. I handed the letter to an attendant beside me, letting him pass it around for everyone to see. Besides this letter, I have other witnesses and evidence. Every piece ironclad. It is impossible for you to deny it. My words left everyone stunned again. I clapped my hands, and another small eunuch dressed in palace attire was pushed in by my personal guards. As soon as he saw the scene in the hall, and the first prince, he immediately collapsed to the ground, shaking all over, scared out of his wits. First brother, do you recognize this person? I looked at the first prince and spoke calmly. The first prince's pupils suddenly shrank to the size of pinpoints, his face pale as paper, unable to say a word. Without waiting for his answer, I turned to the small eunuch. Tell us about the other day, when you secretly sneaked into the third prince's estate, delivered a letter to Luchinyi in the temple, bribed a maid to plant the voodoo charm, and from whom you received the silver, and who instructed you. Tell everything in detail. If you speak well, I might still spare your life. If you dare to hide anything, you will be beaten to death immediately. The eunuch's face was covered in tears as he kowtowed like he was pounding garlic, not daring to hide a thing. I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. It was the first prince. Eunuchly by his side gave me 100 taels of silver, and told me to deliver a letter to side consort Lu in the family temple. He also told me to bribe the maid, Xiao Lian, to plant the voodoo charm at the flower feast to frame the princess. Framing the princess. After it was done, they would give me another 1,000 taels, and help me leave the palace. As he spoke, he tremblingly pulled a banknote from his bosom, and held it high. This is the deposit eunuchly gave me. The banknote has the mark of the first prince's estate. I wouldn't dare lie. With the evidence presented, the silver given by the prince's confidant, the letter written by the prince himself, the eunuch's testimony, and the maid's confession, it was all ironclad. No way to deny it. And one more thing. I picked up the voodoo charm, and in front of everyone, I took out a fire starter and lightly lit it. As it burned, a strange green smoke rose, emitting a faint herbal scent. I held the half-burned herb in my palm, my tone calm, but what I said shocked everyone. This isn't some voodoo charm. This is drunken dream grass. Taken in small amounts, it can cause a person to feel dazed, experience hallucinations, dizziness, and fatigue, and make one feel uneasy. Only long-term consumption will be fatal. Noble consort, have you often felt dizzy and weak lately? Feeling uneasy, and unable to sleep at night? This was all because the first prince secretly sent someone to put this drunken dream grass in your food. It has nothing to do with me. The noble consort's expression changed completely, recalling her recent ailments. The way she looked at the first prince was full of anger and fear. The first prince could no longer hold himself up. With a thud, he fell to his knees, his face ashen. He kowtowed repeatedly, Imperial father, I have been wronged. Shinzi is framing me. She forged the evidence. Just then, a majestic announcement came from outside. His Majesty has arrived. Everyone knelt down simultaneously, not even daring to breathe. My father stepped out from the military official seats and knelt as well, his eyes fixed on me, full of worry. The emperor walked in with powerful strides. His majestic gaze didn't even look at the people kneeling. As he walked straight to me, took the letter from my hand, and the drunken dream grass from my palm, he scanned the letter quickly, and then held the herb to his nose to smell it. His face became so dark it was terrifying. His suppressed anger seemed ready to burn the entire hall down. Eldest son, he spoke. His voice showed no emotion, but it made the first prince tremble. Do you have anything to say? The first prince shook all over, his lips quivering, unable to utter a complete sentence. He could only repeat, I am wronged. I didn't do it. The emperor no longer looked at him. His gaze turned toward the third prince kneeling further back, who had his head bowed very low. His tone was cold, full of disappointment. Third son, your own estate is in such a mess. You can't even manage a woman. And you were even used as a tool, being plotted against without even realizing it. You certainly are a fine prince. The third prince shuddered and bowed his head even lower. Without saying a word, his heart filled with regret and fear. Finally, the emperor's gaze fell on me. I didn't kneel. I just stood there quietly, meeting his eyes. My expression calm, without any fear. After a long while, he said in a deep voice, deal with all of them. 5 simple words decided everyone's fate. That day, blood flowed like a river in the palace. Their conspiracy was completely exposed. Lu Qingyi had already been sent to the temple for long-term confinement. Participating in treason this time added more to her crimes. The emperor ordered the removal of her unborn child's royal status. She was carried out of the temple wrapped in a straw mat and thrown outside the city to be settled. The area outside the city became her final resting place. The first prince plotted to seize the throne, framed a loyal official, and deceived the emperor. Heinous crimes. He was imprisoned in the imperial clan court, stripped of his status as a prince, and confined for life without any chance of being released. There would be no future for him. The third prince was poor at judging people, lax in managing his household, and allowed his concubine to run wild, disrupting the court. He was severely reprimanded by the emperor in front of all officials. Completely cutting off his hopes of vying for the throne, he became the laughingstock of the capital. No longer qualified to compete for the position of heir. The noble consort failed to educate her son and was given the cold shoulder by the emperor. She was moved to the cold palace, stripped of all favor. As for me, Shinzi, by my own efforts, I exposed the plot, protected myself, and guarded the duke's estate. I earned the deep trust of the emperor. Afterward, my father found me. He hesitated for a long while before saying, daughter, if anything like this happens again, don't shoulder it alone. Dad will just bring the army and flatten them. No one will ever dare bully you. My mother held my hand and gave me a thick stack of banknotes, her eyes crinkling with smiles. If anyone dares to bully you, smash them to death with money. No matter how much it takes, Mom is willing to spend it. Mom doesn't mind. I looked at these two people who loved me so much, and my heart felt warm. I pulled out a pre-written divorce agreement from my bosom and handed it to them. Father, mother. I looked at them with a bright smile. Your daughter did it. The emperor can bestow marriage, but he can also return your daughter's freedom. I have already requested a decree from His Majesty to divorce the third prince by mutual agreement. From now on, I am no longer the third prince's consort, but only Shinzi, the daughter of the Duke of Jin's estate. Forget the third prince. Forget the first prince. And forget all the struggles for the throne, they have nothing to do with me. From now on, the sea is wide for the fish to leap, and the sky is high for the birds to fly. I will stay with my parents, protect the Duke's estate, and help the people at the border live a stable life. The three of us looked at each other and smiled, our eyes full of tenderness and happiness. Sunlight poured in through the window, warm and bright. The days to come will have no conflict, no conspiracy, and no grievances. It will all be sweet.